me this one's going to go big.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Right then, cheating Betcoms changing the box. This one came up over at Desert Island Fruits at the back end of last year, November 2022. Levitt Emit here asking the question, do we think that Betcoms cheat you on the box reveal? There was a little bit of a conversation about it. The general consensus seemed to be, yes, they do, and that was a position that I agreed with. I've always felt, even with my limited experience on Betcoms, that the box reveal has always been a little bit shady. The problem, of course, is how do you prove it? You know, you can be pretty sure that something is going on, but if you don't have any evidence, any proof, then it's still just something that you think. So, firstly, let's establish what it is that we're talking about, and we'll start off with the DONDs. Now, on the DONDs, we all know how your game works. We all know how the deal or no deal game works on these, that when you take the deal or no deal game, Noel will say, your box is hidden behind the mirror, the reel will spin, it'll put a little mirror in front of it so that you can't see what your box is. And then if at any point during that deal or no deal game you press deal, the mirror will just flip back and show you what's in your box. If you no deal all the way down, rejecting every single offer, the same thing happens at the end of the game. The mirror flips back and it shows you what was in your box. It doesn't cheat you. Now, one of the things that I have done over the years on the channel was taken out the mirror. This is something that you can do in the emulator, which I used for the cash pot videos and that kind of thing. So here you can see on the Power 5, we can permanently see what's in the box, because in the emulator, I've taken out the mirror reel. In Golden Game here, that's what it would kind of look like to you as a player. You couldn't see what was in your box. The idea was it was a mystery and you were taking the big gamble, just like on the TV show with dear old Mr. Tidybeard. What we also established and what we learned over the years, of course, was that players could learn to read their box so that they would kind of know what was in there. I got reasonably competent on one machine and one machine only, which was Desert Island Deal, which was on site in a pub here for a while, but I actually got halfway decent at reading the box on that. It's from the nibs and the markings on the reel, the way it spins and all that stuff. The point is that it never cheated you. Once you took the deal or no deal game, the reel would spin, the mirror would come down just before the reel stopped spinning, obviously, otherwise you'd be able to see what was in the box before the mirror came down. And then, if at any point you dealt, or if you no dealt all the way down, you would be shown what was in your box. The machine didn't diddle you. You could tell that on the real machine, because even with the mirror across, like on the Golden Game here, you could see, if you were looking into it to try and read your box and read the reel, you could see if it had moved or not, and it didn't. They never did. None of the deal or no deals ever diddled you. They would never move the reel after you took the game. So whatever you want to say about them in terms of compensation and later ones rigging the game and how they would try and control the values and that kind of thing, what did remain consistent throughout 100% on the deal or no deals, the BFM deal or no deals with the physical reel, was they wouldn't cheat you. They would show you at any stage in the game, they would show you what was in the box and what had been in the box from the start. Now, the question around that and the debate around that came with the Betcoms. Now, you can see the big difference here. They've both got a sort of deal or no deal style game, but Cash Exploder here, which is a Betcom machine, or Blueprint, I mean, they're all the bloody same, G Squared, the rest of them, it doesn't have a reel for the game. So that they would work exactly the same way. You've got essentially a reject or accept, it's deal or no deal on the DONDs. And then what would happen is if you pressed accept offer on a Betcom, what it would do is just flash a light at you. So unlike on the deal or no deal, where it would flip the mirror back and show you, okay, here is what was in your box all along, the Betcoms would just flash a light, as if to say that was what was in your box. So you'd see the £35 light or the £100 light, you'd do a little quick flash on it, as if to say that was what was in your box. And the question around this has always been, do they change the result based on what you choose? Because obviously, if you accept the offer at any point, and there's always been the contention about Betcoms, is they have a terrible habit of flashing a high value at you. So we've got a £100 jackpot here, but on the £70 jackpot as well. If you took an offer of 15 quid, you'll get your offer there in the alphanumeric display. So you take an offer of 15 quid, and then whilst the 100 is still there, it'll flash the 100 at you, as if to say, oh, you know what, if you'd have just no dealt down there, would have shown you 100 quid. And similarly, if you no dealt all the way down, they could theoretically flick to a lower value. So let's say you no dealt all the way down to, I don't know, 108. So you decide, I'm going to no deal all the way down and take the chance for 100. They could just flash the 8 at you. Whereas on a deal or no deal, it couldn't do that. It had to show you what was in the box. So this was the point of a debate. This was what Lever Emet was talking about here, is, do the Betcoms cheat? Do they just falsely show you what was in the box, and they switch the reveal based upon what you choose? The issue being around, how do you prove it? So this conversation was in November last year. Where are we? March 2023 now. Not bad by my standards. Right, I said, you know what? If I get a chance, if I've got the time, I'll have a play around with this using the emulator and VMware and see if I can get this going on a virtual machine, and then that will give us the ability to do snapshots and rewind time, and I'll see if I can get some evidence one way or another. The conversation went on from there. It kind of got dropped for a bit as well, because I'm a bit shit sometimes. So it was absolutely in my head to do. For various reasons, it didn't get done. So DOND player here just sort of kind of gave me a prod. You can see there right at the back end of 2022. So did you have a go? Did you get a chance to look at this? Would be an interesting one to see. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll pick it up again. And that time I actually did. So I took the time required to get my virtual environment set up and get the emulator running in a virtualized environment. Now, this doesn't really matter. This next bit is just a little bit of techie detail, because whilst it doesn't really matter on one level, it is the fundamental technology that makes this possible. But by all means, check the time codes and skip if you want to. But I'll just do a little bit of an explanation of what virtualization is, because this is the technology that this little sort of test required or was based on, was virtualization, which gives us the ability to rewind time. Now, virtualization has been around for a long time now, 20 plus years it's been around. It's got much, much better over the years, and it's super slick and super capable these days. And what it effectively does, in essence, it allows you to create multiple computers on a single computer. This is a really good diagram that I think highlights it pretty well, how it works. So you have your physical hardware. This is literally just a computer. You can do this on a sort of fairly standard off-the-shelf computer. You have a bit of physical hardware, which you can install your games and your apps and all the rest of them. But what you can also install on that is something called a hypervisor. What a hypervisor does is sit between the physical underlying hardware and these things here, which are VMs. They are virtual machines. And what happens is the hypervisor here hooks itself into the physical hardware at all kinds of deep levels. So your physical hardware, which has got the CPU, the disk, the memory, the display drivers, the input devices, your keyboard and mouse, all the rest of it. The hypervisor here absolutely hooks itself into that at a fundamental level, and then presents an environment where you can create multiple virtual machines. In this diagram here, there's only two of them, but that can be 4, 8, 10, depending on how beefy your underlying physical hardware is, you can have 50 or more of these virtual machines running on a single piece of physical tin. The idea behind virtualization originally was very much in the sort of productivity enterprise business space, to get away from the idea of you needed to have one server for anything that you wanted to do. So for any application, any business need, you would have to buy one piece of physical hardware that would sit in a rack. It'd need power and network and disk and all the rest of it. And it would kind of do one thing. And that was very, very wasteful, because a lot of the time, a lot of computers, be they domestically or certainly in the business space, aren't really doing much. They're kind of twiddling their thumbs a lot of the time. So the idea was that you could get far more productivity out of your physical hardware by running these virtual machines on top of them. And these virtual machines can run anything. Essentially, you can put Windows on them, you can put Linux on them, whatever operating system you want, and they run independently as their own machines, using the hypervisor to link back. These things here, these VMs, they do not exist in the physical sense. There is no physical computer that exists for these things. They run through the hypervisor using the underlying physical hardware. And one of the major benefits of virtualization in the sort of enterprise business space, as well as for this test, is that you can do things with a virtual machine that you can't do with physical hardware. And one of those abilities is what's called a snapshot. That's exactly what it sounds like. Because this thing is running, almost think of it like an app on your phone. Probably the best way that I can think of to explain virtualization. Think about, if you're an old fucker like me, think about 20 years ago in the early 2000s. If you needed a phone, you would carry a phone around with you. If you wanted to take pictures, your phone couldn't take pictures in the early 2000s. You had to own a digital camera, which you would carry around with you to take pictures. If you wanted to listen to music, you would have an MP3 player in your pocket as well. You'd have to, the iPods, we all remember how big iPods were and other MP3 players back in the day. If you wanted to shoot video, you'd have to have a video camera of some form on you. Who the fuck now has an MP3 player or a video camera or a digital camera? Your phone does it all. And this is not entirely accurate, but essentially your phone here is the physical hardware, and these VMs are your apps, and then you've got the hypervisor in the middle, which leverages all of this physical hardware in. So think about here, VM1 is your camera, VM2 is your MP3 player, VM3 is your video camera, and so on and so forth. It's that kind of idea. It's about using the underlying physical hardware to run multiple instances of apps, essentially. Think about these VMs as apps. So where your phone now could have 50 apps installed on it that back in the day would have all potentially required their own hardware, now you own one bit of hardware and you run a load of apps on top of it. Now, the critical point for this experiment was allowing us to snapshot the VM. And that is essentially creating a moment-in-time copy of the machine. And this is the benefit from all of this running in software. It's incredibly intensive on the CPU, on the disk, and all the rest of it. You do need a beefy machine to get this thing running nicely, but because this thing doesn't exist as physical hardware, what the hypervisor can do is take a moment-in-time snapshot. The way it does it behind the scenes with differencing files, and it creates a branch of the original and all that, we don't really need to worry about that. What it allows you to do is say, okay, freeze this VM at this exact precise moment in time, and then carry on running. And what you can do, so imagine, so it will carry on running, but we have the ability to say, okay, you know what? Loop back, go back and restore that virtual machine from that exact moment in time. There is a huge amount of clever stuff that goes on in the background to make this all work. But that's the takeaway here. What we can do, and this is where it's going to become very relevant for what we wanted to do with these, is you can say, okay, freeze this Windows 10 installation right now and everything that is running on it. So what I did was I created essentially that on one of my PCs here. This is why the video footage is not ideal, because I was videoing it with my phone, because it's on one of my kind of scratch machines, not my main machine. So you'll have to forgive the footage when we go in. But basically, I made that on one of my computers here, and I created a Windows 10 VM. And what I got installed on that was MFME. I got some layouts over it to it, and was then running the emulator in a virtual machine. And then I had the ability to take a snapshot of that Windows 10 virtual machine, and more importantly, everything that was running on it at that precise moment in time, including the emulator itself. So you can guess what's coming next. The idea was then to get a Betcom into a state where we were playing the deal or no deal game, we were dealing down, and then I accepted or rejected the offer. We looked at what it said was in your box, and then we used that snapshot, that rewind time, to go back in time. So the critical thing there was when we get to that point in the game where we're down to the final choice, I take a snapshot of the virtual machine, say, okay, freeze time there, and take a copy of it. Then I would choose one thing, and then I say, okay, fine, I've seen what it does if I choose accept or deal. Now rewind time and show me what happens if I choose no deal. That was the whole point of this. That was what virtualization gives us the ability to do, and that was what I said I would do over on this thread at Desert Island Fruit. Said, yep, this is something I'll have a play around with. I did eventually get round to it and got some footage of it in action, and that is what I will show you next. I was originally intending to get a little bit more involved with this and try and find multiple examples. There are 3 examples that are coming up, but honestly, once we got to a certain point, there didn't really seem to be much need to go any further. If you've proven the point, you have proven the point. So with that said, I'll cut away to the footage now. These are 3 videos that I shot on my phone demonstrating essentially what I've just been talking about here, and you can see how that one panned out for yourself. Right, okay, so is this what we're after here? We've got the Treasure Island Jackpots one, whatever it's called. I've got it on the deal game. We're on the last deal, and it's showing me that we've got either, can you see there? It's 50 or 3. So if I take it, press take it, it says, oh, your box was 50. You've got the 25 quid, but basically saying if you would have rejected that again, you would have got the 50. So let's just rewind time once more. So when we took the offer of 25, it flashed 50 at me and said, oh, your box was 50. So, you know, unfortunately, you made the wrong choice there. If you would have rejected that offer, your box would have been 50 quid. So let's go back in time. The wonder of virtualization. This time we'll reject it. We know if we took it, it said it was 50. Now we'll reject it. Oh, the 50's gone. It was 3. So there you go. What we did there is rewind time and did the exact same deal twice. You saw it there. If we took it, it said, your box was 50. If we rejected it, it went, sorry mate, your box was 3 quid. Didn't take very long to get that. That is the wonder, by the way, of virtualization here. Just got myself set up with a virtual Windows 10 machine. What we can do with this is snapshot it at a point in time, so we can basically take an exact copy of this virtual PC with the emulator running in it, and then literally just rewind time and try the exact same point in time as meant. Let's just do that one more time on the take. So we'll take our offer of 25, Oh, mate, if you'd have just rejected it one more time, it would have been 50 quid. You dirty bastard. Okay, so here's a slightly different one, but a similar kind of idea. We're on juggling jackpots this time. And what we're doing is no dealing all the way down on the game so that we get the super spinny wheel gamble. So you see here, what we're going to do, we've got a couple of offers left. The jackpot on the 50 quid have already gone, so we're going to reject. We're going to reject again. Now you can have a gamble on this wheel here. Now what I'm going to do is say, I don't fancy the gamble. I'm going to take my 40p. And it says, oh mate, cash pot. If only you'd have had the gamble on the wheel, you'd have had your cash pot. I'll repeat for you on the 40p. Well, that's it. So there, look at that. You could have had 14 quid on the cash pot. Instead, you've got a quid off that. So, you know what we're going to do now? We're going to rewind time. And by the way, I've done this multiple times now. This isn't just, I've seen it do it once and now I'm recording. I've gone back and done this like 10 times. And it does exactly the same thing every single time. I have seen it do it with a mega as well. Exactly what you're seeing here. I've done it with a mega, but I didn't have a snapshot to go back to. So you saw what happened there when we no-dealt all the way down. It said, oh, if you had your wheel gamble or your real gamble there, whatever you want to call it, it would have been the cash pot. So you know what it's going to do? Let's just get... I am filming left-handed here, which is not ideal. So we're going to reject... We're going to reject again. And now we're going to say, I want to see what's in my mystery box. I'm going to have my Jester gamble. I'm going to reject. Oh, green shot. And it does that every time. If you take it, it spins to the cash pot and says you would have had the cash pot. If you reject it, it spins to a green shot. Like I say, I have seen exactly the same thing with a mega. And I've also seen it when the cash pot was like 70 quid. Unfortunately, I didn't have a snapshot for either of those, but you can see there that it's giving you a different result based on what you select. I'm sure they've made sure that they're complying with the relevant legislation and all that kind of thing. I'm sure there is stuff in there about what compensated machines are and aren't allowed to do, but there's so many fucking disclaimers in there. I'm sure they could probably get away with it even if you brought it up. Let's just try it one more time. So you saw there, if we reject it, it gives us a green shot. If we take it, it says cash pot. And it's the same every single time, I promise you. It is the same. Right, slight variation on the same theme here. So we're going to do exactly the same sort of scenario where we no deal down all the way to the end. We've got the red Jester going on, but I'm going to say I don't want to risk it. I'm going to take my £12 there. And it's... Oh, mate! It was mega in your box. It was in your super red Jester. It was mega in your box. So, bah! Now, we know what it's going to do here, don't we? So we'll go back and do that again. So we know that if we take our 12 quid, it's going to tell us that there was mega in our super red Jester box. I haven't got it to do a cheat on the game yet, really just because it holds on to the jackpot on the 50 quite tenaciously, but I'm sure I'll get it. So we're going to do the same thing again. There we are. We know if we take our 12 quid, it shows us mega. If we reject the 12 quid, it gives us cash pot, which is an improvement, in fairness. That is an improvement, but it's still doing the same dirty trick. It's basically telling you, you stuffed up there, you could have had 100 quid if you'd had the gamble. Instead, you get 30 quid as a consolation prize. Obviously, the point here is it's showing us different results based on what we choose. And this was always the suspicion with these Betcoms. Unlike your traditional dons, your Tidy Beard Edmonds, BFM DONDs, where you had a physical box and a physical reel that was static, that couldn't cheat you. People always said that these Betcoms would cheat you, but how did you ever prove it? Well, you can prove it with emulation and virtualisation. So there you go. That is fairly conclusive. As I said earlier, you could go and do more of these. You could have a play around with. Frankly, for me, I think we've essentially proven the original kind of suggestion. Do the Betcoms, use the fact that they don't have a box reel on them to show you a false result, to pretend that something was going to happen that in fact doesn't happen. I'm sure it's all legal. I'm sure they've got the get out of jail free card it's a compensated machine, and the odds may not always be that of displayed, and may sometimes offer the player where he has a chance of, no chance of success, all that shit. I'm sure they're not breaking any rules or any laws, but it does show you it is scummy, and it is a scummy variation of the deal or no deal games. Whatever you may think about the BFM Dons, at least they had a straight game with you in the fact that your box was always your box. But we've seen there that the Betcoms will show you a different result based on what you choose, and I think that's a little bit underhand. Indeed, as Mikey Monster says here, nope, if it changes even once, it shows it's unfair. Doesn't even matter if it gives 9 out of 10 times it gives 50 quid. Because the suggestion was made, well, maybe sometimes it can give you, maybe there's some kind of internal chance of what it will do. But yeah, I agree with Mikey there that it doesn't matter. The result, and this is the thing, of course, because BFM did this first and they established how the game worked, and the game, at least in terms of what's in your box and what it revealed, was fair. It would always show you the result that it picked at the start of the game, and Betcom and all the sort of clone companies came along and said, okay, we'll take that idea, but we'll fuck about with it and we'll make it cheat you. And I had felt, even with my limited experience over the years, that the number of times it would show you a big box or a cash pot or a mega streak or whatever it may be, thought surely this game is going to be far, far too powerful if these results are true. But psychologically, it's still a kind of really dirty little trick to say, oh, there you go, you made the wrong choice. Next time, maybe you'll sort of have a no deal or a deal and get the correct result, because it's dynamically altering what it does based upon what you choose, which is something that the Dons simply do not do and can't do because they use a physical reel for their Dond game. I realise it's all slightly academic at this point, since the traditional reel-based AWP is, if not already dead, it's certainly on life support, but it's just another example of the shit that compensated machines can do to give the player a harder time and present themselves as being something that they are not, and trying to say to you, like your unwinnable high-low gambles, it's another version of that in a way, whereby it's offering you a gamble, but in reality, it's already decided if it's gonna fuck you or not. I've said this before, I will say it again, I am not sorry to see the back of these things, and I am quite happy about the fact that when I go out to the pub with my mates, if I fancy a little gamble, I can just have a go on a random game and just take my chances along with everybody else. So, thank you very much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll catch up with you next time. But for now it is goodbye.